right, so hi, it's me, Tiffany. Um, Sorry if I look a little crazy. I'm in my pajamas, having this is an ultraviolet monster. I'm just sick of all the trouble that I'm having, obviously, and I'm sick of complaining about it. Honestly, there's not much I can say about it at this moment. But like I've been saying, wheels are turning, and that's all I'll say about it at the moment. Now, as the title says, it's my scariest memory. I've been watching TikToks all day. And one of them that's got me is tell me about your scariest memory. And I know this will probably take longer than like a TikTok video would take. So that's why I'm on YouTube. Yay. Um, as far as there's so many stories I could tell. Like I could probably make this into a series because my entire life has just been one scary incident after the next, after the next, after the fucking next. um, Stephen King would love me, but okay. I mean, there's so many that I could choose from, but this one that I decided to go with, say hi, Noonie, was one that happened to my mom. And I witnessed it, and I have an incredibly long history with my mother of where she has a health crisis and does not want to go to the hospital and damn near dies. And then once she's in the hospital, hooked up to all of the IVs and crap, and, basically been brought from the brink of death, she's like, "Oh, Tiffany, thank you for saving my life." And it's like, God damn it, if you would have listened to me, you would have been much better sooner. And just as a side note, the last time before my mother went into the hospital, um, we argued for 2 weeks straight before she went into the hospital. And I still honestly feel in my soul that if I had forced her to go sometime before the 2 weeks had gone by, she quite possibly could still be here. Because I mean, I started arguing with my mother January 2nd, 2008, and she did not go into the hospital until January 16th, 2008. I remember because it was Martin Luther King Day. She did not want to go in until then, but I made her go, and she was pissed with me. So, okay, but this one happened years earlier from that. Um, it was between a New Year's Eve and a New Year's Day. And I'm trying to remember if it had to have been going from 2000 into 2001. Because from 99 to 2000, my mother and I were in church. So, yeah, it had to be from, you know, going from 2000 to 2001. So I had to be 14. And, okay. So, for a few weeks, just to put it into perspective, for a few weeks beforehand, um, my mother had been having trouble breathing. She'd been coughing a lot, coughing up a lot of mucus, and it just was not a fun time. And really, honestly, in my mind at 14, I thought it was a flu, and she should have been in bed. But I mean, this is America, so unless you're just dead, you go to work. You get to infect the entire office. So, this had gone on for quite a while. And, New Year's, we were supposed to watch, I think it was supposed to be Big Mama's house. We were supposed to watch it. But she didn't, because I had it on DVD. She didn't feel like watching it. And, she just wanted to rest. So I said, okay. So, I didn't really stay up and celebrate New Year's. So I went ahead and went to bed. So my mother could still walk around me. She still had her legs and everything. So around 2 a.m., the way the house was is the old house that the roof blew off of. It was my room, my mother's room, and then the den with the back door that led outside. And I remember I heard the back door open. And it's like 2 a.m. and I'm like, why in the hell is the back door opening? Is somebody breaking in? Should I go run to the front of the house and get my father so he can get his pistol? Um, so I get up and I tiptoe through there, and it's December, it's January, it's cold. So my mother's standing at the back door, with the door open, but not the screen door. She's just like standing in the screen door looking outside. And I'm like, Mom, what's up? What's going on? And she's saying she's having trouble breathing. And I mean, her breathing was like super labored. Like, so the dance began. I said, okay, you can't breathe. Um, do you want to go to the hospital? Like, obviously, because let me tell you, we've had the way that it used to be when my mother was alive. If a week went by where we didn't have to call 911, it was a good week. Because the ambulance was at my house so much and the paramedics were in my house so much that it got to the point where I started to know these people on site. And, they rock up and they come in and they're like, oh, it's Miss Butler again. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, hey, how are you? How's your wife? How's your kids? I mean, that's how often I saw them. So I'm arguing with my mom now, 2 a.m. in the morning. My dad is in his room sleeping peacefully. Um, no idea that this shit is going on. My dad was oblivious to so much shit when my mother was sick in the back of the house that a lot of times he didn't even know anything was going on until the paramedics were knocking on the front door. And he was like, did you call the ambulance? And we're like, yeah, we call the ambulance. Let him in. So I'm sitting in the back room arguing with mom. Mom can't breathe for shit. And I know I must have argued with her for at least a good hour. The reason my mother had such an aversion to go into the emergency room was because it was very difficult to get an IV into her. Her veins rolled, which is now a problem that I have in dialysis, which is why I keep getting stuck 2 and 3 times. Her veins rolled, and it would blow the IV, so she would have to get stuck multiple times to get an IV to even work, and she hated that tremendously. And I just remember I started crying, and like, because she couldn't breathe. In my head, I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna die. Mom's gonna die. And I started crying like, Mom, I don't want to have. I just started naming family members. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to have to call so and so and tell them that you're dead. I don't want to have to call so and so and tell them that you're dead. I don't want to have to go find Dad and tell him that you're dead. Which unfortunately, in 2008, I did have to go tell my dad that my mom died. That's a whole different story for a different day. But I cried and bitched and wailed and everything. And finally, she was like, "Fine, call 911. I'll go." So okay. So I mean, it was always call 911, and if it's not too much of an emergency, go find Dad and let him know to let the ambulance people in. If not, he would just be surprised to find a crowd of white people on his porch. um, so call 911. Paramedics show up. They get Mom, rush her down to the hospital. Of course, me and Dad have to get dressed and go to the hospital because I still didn't know what the hell was going on. Like, usually I know, usually it would be for low blood sugar because my mother was a horrific diabetic. But in this instant, it had nothing to do with her blood sugar. Like, her blood sugar was fine. Okay. They carry Mom away. Me and Dad go to the hospital, to the emergency room. You know, And I still don't know what's happened. I still don't know what happened. My dad is driving in. I'm explaining and recalling the story to him of, mom couldn't breathe, blah blah, whatever. And my dad wanted to say it was because my mother smoked, but my mother hadn't smoked in like 5 years by then. She stopped smoking in 1996, and then it was like 2001. So we get to the hospital, and they have mom hooked up to all these monitors, taking blood pressure and all this. Nurses and doctors running around and everything. So finally, the doctor gets a hold of us. I think it was a nurse practitioner, whatever. But they pulled us aside and it was like, um, it's a good thing you brought her in when you did. And we were like, why? Well, what's wrong, And they were like, oh, she's going into congestive heart failure. If you would have waited another 24 hours, she probably would have had a heart attack and died. So, yeah, that's just one of many. And of course, my mother was, thank you, Tiff, for calling and making me come. And, if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't be here, blah, blah. Yeah. But yet and still, you still didn't take me to go see Michael Jackson in September of 2001. So I'm still salty about that 20 plus years later. And I will forever be salty about that 20 plus years later. Because as many times as I've saved her, Mom, as many times as I've saved you, she didn't want to spend $1,200 for me to go see Michael Jackson. And NSYNC, and Luther Vandross, and Gloria Estefan, and Shaggy, and everybody else that played the show. Whitney Houston, Usher, Maya, Liza Minnelli. I would have paid money to see Liza Minnelli. But yeah, that's just one of many, many, many times I had to argue with my mom to get her to the hospital, and many, many times where I've heard, oh, if you'd have waited another 24 hours, she wouldn't have made it. Yeah, so that's the thing for me. And you saw me sucking on the monster. My mother's been gone since 2008. My sleep pattern is still disturbed from 20 years ago. Because with the way my mother was in such fragile health, especially towards the end, I used to wake up without an alarm every 2 hours on the hour. So I would go to bed at like midnight, 2, 4, 6, 8. I'm waking up to go check and make sure that my mother is still breathing. And that was every single night. And she hated it because I would physically tap her. Oh, you can't see me shaking any, but I would physically tap her until she like woke up and cussed at me. So I could know she was, if she's cursing at me, she's breathing. Eventually, she just got to the point where she's like, just stop waking her up. So I had to get really close to her so I could listen and, hear that she was breathing. And then I'd like watch her chest and stomach to make sure it was rising and falling like normal. Yeah, and I had been doing that since I was, oh God, like what, 13? 12, 13? Probably younger than that, probably 11, I think. Because she really started having surgeries when I was 10. Just so much surgery. And not like cosmetic surgery, like serious surgery, like, oh my God, just so much stuff. Angiograms, amputations, had to have a part of her intestines removed. Oh yeah, that was a scary night. That was definitely a fucking scary night. Now that I probably should have made that the first story. I thought my mother died in front of me. I think that was one of the first times I probably ever really like freaked the fuck out. Because usually when my mother's blood sugar would drop, like I knew what to do. Take her blood sugar. I have stabbed my thumb so many times with that damn needle. So take her blood sugar, and her blood sugar is bad, and get powdered sugar to rub on her gums while I wait for the paramedics. Alert my father. Uh, but that time, oh god, that was. I think I probably mentally blocked that. That's why I didn't think of it first off. But okay, bonus story since I'm still talking. Um, so yeah, everything would have happened at night. Now I don't know the exact time frame for this. I'd like to say I was somewhere between 18 and 20. So between 2004 and 2006. Um, so I'm in bed sleep, of course, and I hear my mother calling my name. So I go into her room and I say, "Yes, mom, what's the matter?" She says, "Bring me your inhaler. I'm asthmatic." She says, "Bring me your inhaler." Um, I go get my inhaler for her. And now keep in mind, my mother is not asthmatic. Um, had never used an asthma inhaler before. And so I remember I was, I mean, I'm not even supposed to give it to her because it's prescribed to me, but I'm gonna, like, that's my mom. And, she asked for it. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And, so, I tried to, I can't pump it because it's medicine, but, I pumped it. And I distinctly remember this. The lights in her room was off, but the light from the nightlight on her wall was, putting a glow over her face. And I saw when I puffed it, it went into her mouth and then came out as a little ball of mist. Like she didn't inhale it, it just came out of her mouth as a ball of mist. And I was like, Mom, you gotta inhale it when I push it because, it's just dispensing in the air. And so she was like, I mean, she was having trouble breathing. She was really having trouble breathing. Um, so I squeezed it, and she managed to inhale it the way you're supposed to do it. And she was. So I asked her. I remember that vividly. I was like, "Are you?" I said, "Can you breathe?" And I distinctly, she didn't look at me. She was looking straight ahead, and she said, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe." And then, lights out. Oh my god! I thought she died right in front of me. I flipped the fuck out. So, the phone was right there. So, landline. So I picked up the phone and dialed 911 because I was like, oh my God, I think my mother's dead. I think my mother's dead. So, 911 picks up, yo, 911, what's your emergency? I'm just shrieking. Like, I mean, I was just in hysterics. I'm screaming. I'm crying. I don't even think she could fully understand me because I think I was screaming, you know, my mom is dead, my mom is dead, my mom is dead. For all intents and purposes, Rita Butler was dead. And, I'm losing my shit. Now, keep in mind, my father is in his room because since my mother was sick, she had her own room to herself. My dad is in his room. He has no fucking idea that there's bedlam going on in the back of the house. So I remember the person saying, the 911 dispatcher saying, well, can you do 911? Like, I mean, can you do CPR? I'm like, I could try. And, I'm trying to talk to the dispatcher. I'm screaming through the house, Dad, Dad, Dad. And she was like, well, can you go open it? I'm like, I can't open the door. I don't want to leave my mother. And, it was just a, a whole shit show. So finally, my dad, I guess he woke up or he heard me screaming through the house or whatever. He comes running. And that's incredible to see a 70-plus-year-old man come running. He came running. What the fuck? Oh! So he sees that and he didn't realize I was on the phone with 911. So he's turning in circles trying to run because there was a phone in his room and he was trying to get to that phone to call 911. I'm like, I got 911 on the phone. So in the distance you can hear the wee the paramedics. And I just literally shoved because my mother is still out fucking cold. I literally fucking shoved him. And I said, go open the door for the paramedics. And she ran. So, I mean, that was my poor father. He's scared to death, bless his heart. I was scared to death. Mom was out cold, communing with the angels. And here comes the paramedics. So, they're doing their thing. EKG on mom, putting the IV in her, testing her blood sugar. I mean, they're doing the whole rigmarole. And, they get her up, get her off to the emergency room. So, me and dad, again, get dressed, run to the emergency room. So once again, I get to relay what's going on to my father as we're driving to the emergency room because we always do. That's what I always do. Handle it up and then, give a play-by-play as we drive to the emergency room. We get to the emergency room. Now, keep in mind, it's like 3 a.m. So they told me, now, before I get into this, I'm aware that people have surgery. And in my mind, surgery was a 9 to 5 type of thing. Like, a doctor's office is from like 9 to 5. And, I thought that after 5 p.m., you didn't have surgery. You waited until the next morning. No. By the time we got there, my mom, 3 a.m., is getting prepped for surgery right then. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, surgery now? It's 3 a.m. People are supposed to be sleeping right now. And, they said, no, it's an emergency. It has to be done like right now, exactly right now. And I was like, we can't wait until in the morning. I mean, literally in my head, I'm like, we can't wait until in the morning. I'm asking this. She'll be dead by in the morning. We have to do this now. So they're looking at my dad. Do we have your consent, sir? Yeah, save my wife. That's my dad. So basically what had happened was this. A few weeks prior, my mother had had surgical mesh put in because she had a hernia. We have no idea how the hell she got that hernia. But she got a hernia. And somehow her intestines managed to twist. And the portion that twisted had died. So it was necrotic, which means that it was dead tissue that was starting to rot within a living person. And her passing out and all of that was a combination of that and her going into sepsis. So if they did not remove it right then, it would have poisoned her bloodstream and she would have died. She would have gone septic and died. So, we're sitting there at 3 in the morning and my father is giving consent to go in and do exploratory surgery. My mother had so many exploratory procedures, I've lost count of them, where basically they don't know what the fuck they're cutting into. They don't know what the fuck they're going to find. We're all just like Lewis and Clark going into uncharted waters every time we, took a dive into my mother's body. So, I mean, I'm laughing about it, but if I don't laugh about it, I'll fucking cry. So yeah, they had to go in and they had to remove, the offending part of her intestine that had died and also replace the mesh because somehow the mesh had shifted or something. I mean, I should have known something was wrong because my mother's stomach was very distended, very hard. She looked like she was pregnant, and that was impossible because she had had a hysterectomy when I was 12. So she wasn't pregnant. And, once again, it's one of them numbers of, Tiff, I'm glad you were here and you called 911 for me. And I distinctly remember asking, I said, Mom, do you remember, that night? Do you remember what happened? And she was like, the last thing she remembered was calling for me and me coming in with my inhaler. And after that, it was lights out until she was at the hospital being prepped. They brought her back around before they sedated her. So yeah, that was pretty scary because, like I said, I blocked that from my memory. Because yeah, I really thought I'd witnessed my mother take her last breath. Boy, that was a scary moment. Mm. I'm not gonna cry because I already cried. I already did my crying for this year. But I'm just glad she's in a better place now and like she's away from, all the pain and worry and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I've been talking for quite a while, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop now. But yeah, there's lots more ground I could cover. And I also have some stories from my father. Like the time he fell off a roof. That's a story for a different day. And I saw him fall off the roof. Damn. Look, I've seen some shit. That's probably why Noonie ain't got no eyebrows. We done seen some shit. All right. Bye bye. Stream something Jackson.